All right, so week 4. Today what we're going to talk about is polynomial long division, or I should say this week. We are only going to focus on division. The last week we talked about adding, subtracting, multiplying polynomials, and then dividing is a little bit harder. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start off with going back to what you did in 3rd grade and talking about kind of like how we long divide, because granted, it's been a while. It's not expected that you have memorized and remember how to divide the long way, in a way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and practice that, and I'm going to go through the steps as far as how you divide, because those steps are going to carry through when we are working with polynomials, when we start dividing things like this. So please make sure you're jotting this down either in your journal or possibly you're writing it down so that you're going through the steps as well. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at this 25 and see how many times it goes into, first of all, 5. It doesn't go into 5 at all. So we need to actually look at the second term. That second term, it says 52, so 25 goes into 52 2 times. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to take this number here and we're going to multiply it by our number here. So our divisor. What happens, let's back up for a second and talk about what this looks like as a fraction. So this would actually be 520 divided by 25. Now 25 is actually our divisor. And this is called our dividend. Now the answer to a fraction or a division problem is actually called the quotient. And that's going to be our answer. So you're going to see that you're going to see that in Desmos as Q of t as a quotient. Another vocabulary term that we're going to talk about with this lesson is called a remainder. Yeah. And in Desmos, that's going to actually be r of x, which is going to be r of x with our remainder divided by our quotient. And that's going to give us our final term. But let's get back to dividing long. So we're going to take this number, our quotient so far, and divide it by our divisor, which is going to be 2 times 25, which will end up giving us 50. Now in this case, we are going to end up subtracting, so we're going to end up changing the sign and drawing a line in a way. Just remember that you're subtracting that value from 52. When you do that, then that's going to end up being 2. So 52 minus 50 is just going to give us a 2. Now 25 doesn't go into 2, and that's a good thing because otherwise this number is incorrect and we needed to go up one more. But what we're going to do now is we're going to bring down that 0. Okay, and that's going to end up giving us 20. 5 goes into 20 0 times. Remember, you still need a 0 there as a place value. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a remainder of 20, but our quotient is 20. So our answer is going to end up being 20 over 20 divided by 25. And we would write that as a mixed number. So down as a polynomial, this is really like 20 plus 20 over 25, and then we would see if anything can simplify, which out of 20 and 25, we can divide out of 5, so that would just end up being 20 and 4/5. That would be our end answer for this problem. So we would always take our remainder and divide it by our divisor, the original divisor, and then that would be our answer. So let's go to take a look. So you must write polynomials so that the degrees of the polynomial terms are descending in order high to low. Use a 0 coefficient for any missing terms as a placeholder. So that first sentence is just specifying, make sure it's in standard form. And then the second one is use a 0 coefficient for any missing terms. And we'll run into that not on the first problem, but on the second problem. We'll have a few different place values where we'll need to put in a 0, and I'll talk about that. Now, when we're working with long division, if the denominator of the rational expression is lower degree than the numerator, as in this equation right here, when we have x to the third divided by x to the first, okay, you can transform this mixed number and form the long division. So we're going to take our divisor and move it to the outside, and then what we're trying to divide, our dividend, is going to go on the inside. So let's go ahead and start dividing. You may need to stop and pause this video, that's fine. There's also, I'm going to link some more Khan Academy videos just to kind of help you out and give you more resources on this lesson. And I would like to see that you practice this concept and skill, because it's not something you can just do once. So one of your maybe one or two of your reflection questions is just completing an assignment on Khan Academy to at least 75%, because this assignment, this skill, is something that really does need to be practiced in order to understand it and get it. And it's not something you might get on the very first try, and that's okay. Just keep trying and figuring out why you may have had a small mistake somewhere. Okay, so when we start off, we need to see how many times x minus 2 goes into the first two terms. Now, when you are dividing, you are really looking at this first term to see how many times. We don't care about the minus 2 at the very moment, okay? But we're going to take x and we're going to multiply it by some number, okay? And it's going to end up being 3x cubed, and that's what we're looking for right now. So the coefficient in front of x is really 1. So 1 times what gives us 3, and that's just 3. And then x times what gives us x to the third, and that's x squared. So we would end up with 3x squared. Now, remember when we were up here and we took that 2 and we had to basically multiply it by 25 to get our term 50? That's exactly what we're doing here. So we're going to take 3x squared and we're going to multiply it by both terms. So our first term is 3x squared times x, and that's going to end up giving us 3x cubed. And if these numbers are not the same, double check your math, something's not quite right. Now the next term we need to multiply by 3, because not only is it just x, but it's negative 2 times 3x squared as well. So 3 times negative 2 gives us negative 6, and then x squared times, there's no exponent, or no variable, so it's just going to end up leaving us x squared. Alright, now this is the step that a lot of people get tripped up on. I want you to think about what we did up here. We needed to subtract the 50 from 52 in order to see what was remaining. Okay, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to subtract 3x cubed minus 6x squared from this entire polynomial in order to continue to divide. So last year my kids started saying draw a line, change the sign. If that works for you, go for it, but what you're really doing is you're subtracting this polynomial. So kind of like 3x cubed minus 2x squared minus 3x minus 6x squared. I just rewrote what was over here. When you distribute that negative, the signs change. And that's going to happen every single time we do this. That's cubed. So, draw the line, change the sign. If that's an easy saying for you, go for it. We're going to go ahead and combine like terms here. So we're going to end up with negative 2x squared plus 6x. So 6 minus 2 is going to give us 4x squared. Okay, now when we are dividing, we cannot just divide by that term. So see how there's two terms here? We need to go ahead and divide by two terms by bringing 13x down. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and see what can I multiply x by to get 4x squared. And what we're going to end up with is 1 times what gives us 4, and that's going to give us positive 4. And then x times what gives me x squared, and that's just x to the first power. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look, and I'm going to, we need to multiply this 4x by x and negative 2. So I'm going to distribute both the 4x to both of those terms. So 4 times 1 is just going to give me 4. Okay, x times x squared, I'm sorry, x times x is going to give me x squared. And then minus 8x. But remember, when we're dividing, we need to go ahead and subtract that term away. So we're going to subtract Distribute the negative to both terms. A negative becomes now a positive. The sign changes. Combine like terms. This is going to become 0. And then negative 13x plus 8 is going to give us a negative 10. Nope, not 10. 5. Okay. And we're going to bring down the plus 14. Next step, see how many times x goes into negative x. It's just going to be negative 5 times. Distribute that negative 5 to both terms. We're going to end up with negative 5x plus 10. Combine like terms. Well, let's go ahead and do that in a different color. Let's go for green. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we need to subtract this binomial. So this is going to end up being a positive, and this is now a negative. So we're going to draw the line, change the sign. This becomes 0. 14 minus 10 is just going to give us 4. Okay, now there is nothing I can multiply x by to give me 4. So in this case, 4 is our remainder, and we stop here. In mathematics, or on a quiz or a test in my class, we would say our answer is 3x squared plus 4x minus 5. We need to add this remainder. So plus 4 divided by, and then our original divisor is just x minus 2. So this would be the end-all answer. Okay, now in Khan Academy, it's going to ask you for what is the quotient. And the quotient in this case is just going to give you 3x squared plus 4x minus 5. And then if we're looking for just the remainder, because it's going to show you remainder equals rx equals, okay, the remainder divided by your dividend. So it might be like d of x, and this might be p of x or something like that. But we're going to say the remainder is just 4. Okay. All right. So that's for that problem. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next example. All right, so for this example, we're going to end up simplifying x to the third plus 8 all divided by x plus 2. And it's asking if it's a factor. Now, the only way it would be a factor if there is no remainder, and that's what we're looking for. And if there is a remainder, then that means that this is not a factor. So we're looking for no remainder, or the remainder equals 0. Now, let's go ahead and set it up. So x plus 2 is on the outside. On the inside, we're going to start off with x to the third, but we do need some placeholders because we're missing x to the second. So we would multiply that by 0, and plus 0x to the first plus 8. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and take a look. What do I need to multiply x by to get to x to the third? So if we're looking at this, we're looking at our first term, and we're looking at the first term of the polynomial here. X times what gives me x to the third, and that's just going to give me x squared. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and multiply my x squared by both terms on the divisor. So we're going to end up with x squared times x, which is just going to give me x third to the third power. X squared plus 2x. I'm sorry, x squared times 2 would just give me 2x squared. And then we're going to go ahead and subtract. So when I subtract, we're going to end up drawing the line, changing the sign, or draw the distribute the negative, which would change the signs. This becomes 0. If this does not become 0, that first term, okay, then you have an issue and you need to go back and recheck your math. Now we end up with 0 minus 2 x squared. That's why we need our place value, our placeholder. Otherwise you would end up with 8 minus 2x squared, and you can't really do that. Okay, so we need to factor this, and in order to, we need to divide this out, and in order to divide this out, we need 2 terms. So we're going to bring down the 0x to the first power. All right, what do I multiply x to get to negative 2x squared? And that's just going to give us negative 2. And then x times what gives me x squared? That's just x. So multiply that out. So we're going to end up with negative 2x times x, which is negative 2x squared. Perfect. Okay, and then negative 2x times positive 2, which is negative 4x. We're going to go ahead and subtract. When we subtract, remember we're going to change the signs. So we're going to draw the line.